The historic impeachment vote against suspended Western Cape Judge President Judge Hlophe is set to continue in Parliament. This is despite him approaching the Constitutional Court to block a vote on his removal. Hlophe is accused of attempting to influence judges in the highest court in a matter relating to former President Jacob Zuma. Let's discuss this now with the Council for Advancement of the South African Constitution senior researcher Dan Mafora. Dan, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. Is the Constitutional Court challenge likely to have an effect on the parliamentary vote?
Thank you so much for having me. The application to the Constitutional Court by Judge President Hlophe is unlikely to have an effect on Parliament's processes. As we know, Judge Hlophe has not secured an interdict stopping the committee from proceeding with the vote, or for the National Assembly rather, from proceeding with the vote. And so for as long as there is no interdict that stops Parliament from holding a vote on the issue, it is likely to continue. It's also worth noting, I think, that the application to the Con Court has not been pleaded as one of urgency or as one that requires the court to issue any interim measures before it can decide the merits of the case. So as we stand here today, there isn't an effect on Parliament's work that will be brought about by the application.
So effectively then the judge can be removed. Maybe thereafter Parliament would have to deal with a decision that could be maybe nullified by the courts.
It's quite unlikely if you track the history of this matter, which stretches back about almost, I think, about 15 years or so. The points that are being raised, the arguments that have been raised, have been roundly rejected by every single court since this matter has been litigated. And so this is just an attempt to try and buy more time, or a last kind of desperate attempt to evade accountability on the part of the judge. But as we know from the history of the matter, the issues that are being raised have been dealt with, have been rejected by every court up to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and even the Constitutional Court in other cases. And so this seems unlikely to succeed, and it shouldn't be cause for Parliament to not do its constitutional duty.
Has a step being skipped here constitutionally, where the judge is arguing that before removing a judge of this nature, investigations must be conducted by both the JSC and Parliament, and currently the Parliament has not been given that particular benefit?
Well, there is no such requirement in the Constitution. The Constitution clearly provides that the JSC is the one that has the power to find whether or not a judge has committed gross misconduct or is grossly incompetent and should be impeached. The JSC has done so and has referred its decision to the National Assembly. What the Constitution requires is, once that recommendation has been sent to the National Assembly, for the National Assembly to take a vote on it, and by a 2/3 majority decide whether or not to remove the judge. This idea that it's comparable to section 193, which deals with the removal of Chapter 9 institutions, or section 89, which deals with the removal of the president, are completely wrong. These are very different provisions, and there is no requirement for Parliament or for a committee of Parliament to commit its own investigation, because that power has been given to the JSC.
So what are the procedural issues there that you're looking at that you say are unlikely to be resolved by the 21st of February for Parliament to sit and deliberate on this matter?
Well, I don't think there's any procedural issues that would hamper Parliament from proceeding. As I said, until and unless there is an interdict, there's nothing standing in the way of Parliament. And this decision this approach to the Constitutional Court will not have that effect at all. And what I was saying will is unlikely to be resolved or is unlikely to change the outcome of the case is the question on the merits, whether or not what Judge President Hlophe is alleging is likely to be taken up by the Constitutional Court. I'm saying that is unlikely based on the history of the matter.
Are we likely going to see once again a situation where the courts could be ordering Parliament to come up with rules now for removing a judge, like we've seen now with the removal of a Chapter 9 head, and of course clarity on the rules on the impeachment of the president? Is this uncharted territory?
It is not. Like I said, the provisions are not comparable. They're quite different, and it spells out in detail how this process is supposed to work, and that is exactly how this process has worked. There is a very little chance that the court would, as in the case of the president or the public protector, order that rules be made, because of how that section that deals with the removal of judges is structured as opposed to the other two sections.
So to wrap it up, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that there is no interdict against the parliamentary process. There are no impediments to the committee continuing with this because it's not the same rules that would have applied to the Chapter 9 institution. So it's unlikely that this will be stopped. It will go ahead.
It is unlikely.
Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Let's leave it there for this evening. That is Senior Researcher at KSAC, Dan Mafora.